Jolene Bukowski is a short, curvy woman with shoulder-length dark brown hair and blue-gray eyes. She is Rob Bukowski's longtime wife, and together they own my favorite jewelry store. Jolene and I worked on a custom necklace design for my wife for our upcoming 20th wedding anniversary. I bought a large piece of malachite, a turquoise stone not often found in large pieces, at a custom stone store, and Jolene and I were figuring out how to set the egg-shaped stone to make it really pop. I was 9 months away from my 20th anniversary, but I'm one of those people who likes to finish important things early. I thought 20 years of marriage was a long time, and I wanted my gift to reflect that. I work as a forensic accountant and make good money, so it was easy for me to spend $4,200 on this gift. My wife certainly deserved it. We've had a wonderful marriage for over 19 years, and since we're both in our 40s, I think the best is yet to come. Both of our daughters are set to go to college within the next 3 years, and we have discussed all sorts of things we could do as empty nesters. We loved raising our children, but we were also looking forward to this new and exciting phase of our lives. Jolene said the necklace would take 4 months to complete. We agreed on an advance of half the amount I paid. She hugged me, and I returned to my office feeling like the cat that ate the canary and the sparrow for dessert. As promised, the necklace was ready 4 months later. The 14-karat gold braided chain matched the stone and setting perfectly. Jolene didn't even bother asking if I wanted it in any case. I bought enough stuff there for us to discuss the lack of packaging. On the way home, I called our favorite high-end Italian restaurant and made a reservation for our anniversary night. This meant that I would have to wait another 5 months, but I was fine with that. Everything was ready. Spring in the Midwest is a wonderful time when everything starts to come alive and green after months of cold and mostly gray days. As I drove home, I thought about getting the mower out of the garage next weekend and tidying up the lawn around the house. I briefly thought about asking my daughters to help me, but quickly dismissed the idea. There's no way in hell 2 teenage girls would miss a beautiful spring weekend helping their dad with yard work. I chuckled to myself at my insanity as I squeezed my car into the garage next to my wife's. Speaking of girls, I noticed that Mo's car wasn't parked in its usual spot at the entrance. I wondered absently if Jude was with her. Walking in the door from the garage, there was no smell of dinner, which meant my wife and I would either go out to eat or I would be grilling. I really hoped it would be the latter. I love grilling, and I especially love grilled food. All grilled foods taste better. Tracy sat in the family room with a glass of white wine in her hand. She was still wearing the outfit she wore to work, which told me we were probably going to eat at a pretty nice restaurant. "Is Jude coming with us? Or is she going with Mo?" I asked my wife bluntly. "The girls will be with my parents until Sunday." "We need some adult time, King," she replied, taking a quick sip of wine. "I admit I was a bit of a pervert. My first thought was that we would have a romantic 2 days in bed, playing games. At 43, my wife still had beauty, forcing heads to turn wherever she goes, and bodies to match. However, the expression on Tracy's gorgeous face was far from playful. I stopped dead in my tracks, feeling a strong blow to my stomach. My mind began to race, trying to figure out which family members had died. "I want a divorce, Kingston," she said quietly but firmly. Somewhere in the depths of my brain there was an explosion. It seemed to me that I was frozen in place. An unknown number of seconds passed before my brain turned on again. "What?" I asked, meekly. I didn't say that my brain turned on full blast. "I want a divorce," she repeated in a strong, clear voice. I know that for a moment I was pretending to be a fish emerging from the water and gasping for air. "What?" I had no idea that we had any problems. "What the hell are you talking about?" I started quietly, but ended loudly. She didn't even flinch. She just continued to look straight at me, practically looking right through me. "Who is this woman?" I bought some time by going to my well-stocked liquor cabinet and hesitated a bit about what to choose. "So, let's see. Tequila. No, this is for joyful events, parties. Bourbon. No, too ordinary. Rye. This is a good strong whiskey. No, not serious enough for this situation. Scotch, single malt. Seriously. Very serious, I muttered, as if to myself. I poured the equivalent of 2 shot glasses and added 2 teaspoons of water to the glass. When he turned to his wife, her gaze turned fierce. Okay, task completed. Now we're both a little out of our element. What's going on, baby? We hardly spoke. I thought everything was fine. Even better than fine, I said. I love you, King, and always will, but I'm no longer attracted to you, she said. I want to feel attraction again, but I won't cheat on you. I need to get a divorce so I can be free and find someone I can fall in love with. I suddenly felt like I was going to throw up. Instead, I took a good sip of my Glenmorangie and felt the liquid move from my mouth, down my throat, and into my stomach. Out of the blue? That is, I understand that you don't want to cheat on me, but you want to end us without even giving us a chance to return? I asked. It's over between us, King. Why spoil the memory of what we had? From there, everything can only go downhill. And to answer your unasked question, there is no one yet. I wish we could remain friends. If we end this now, I think we can do this and have a mature divorce without all this antagonistic crap, Tracy said. Does this mean that you will be reasonable about alimony? I asked. And you understand that the girls would prefer to stay in the house with me? Yes, she said affirmatively. Tracy remained true to her word, at least regarding child support. However, I was surprised when I received a summons to the office on Monday morning. This meant that all this had been prepared for a long time. I was also a little disappointed that she arranged for it to be given to me at work. Considering we talked about it, I felt like she could serve me at home. This, of course, would have worked better if she wanted us to remain friends, as she claimed. The next day, I took a couple of hours off and took the documents to my lawyer, who was my boss's lawyer when he got divorced 5 years ago. She told me it was a good deal, and if I signed it, she could start working right away. In about 6 months, I'll be on the divorce statistics. Just like that. My daughters were as surprised by their mother's request as I was when we told them about Tracy's request for a divorce that Sunday morning after they returned home from her parents. What have you done, Dad? Mo practically shouted at me after Tracy shared her scoop. I expected a negative reaction, but was not ready for an attack, especially since I was not the initiator of this act. Not my doing, not my choice, not my fault, I said. Mo looked from me to her mother. Tracy lowered her eyes. This was the first time she didn't seem completely in control of the situation. Maureen, 18 years old and a high school student, was practically Tracy's double, both in appearance and behavior. She crossed her arms under her chest and glared at Tracy. As she had done many times before in our marriage, Tracy looked at me, expecting me to come to her aid with an explanation. I raised my eyebrows and raised my hands in surrender. Your circus, yours and the monkeys, I said. Tracy looked at both girls. Judith is 16 years old and a graduate. It took 10 minutes to explain everything to the girls. The question and answer period took another 10 minutes. Excuses and apologies took another 5 minutes. Sorry, Dad. I guess I was too hasty, Mo said when Tracy was done. Then she turned back to her mother. What the hell are you, bitch? Did you just throw away almost 20 years of your life with the sweetest guy in the world? On a whim? This is a bad joke, right? She shouted at Tracy. Tracy stuttered and stammered. She explained everything to the girls, no better than to me. She repeated that she didn't cheat on me and didn't want to cheat on me. We continued to live in our house, with me staying in the guest room until the divorce was finalized. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from my neighbor, John Regan, who lives 2 doors down from our house. Mo, Jude, and I had a couple of pizzas for dinner since Tracy was working late. This was something she had to do occasionally in her 15 years of working at First Financial, so the girls and I usually used it as an opportunity to get something yummy for dinner. Do you have a minute, King, to talk without the girls? John asked in the tone I usually heard from the undertaker. Let's go to my office, John, I said, getting up from the kitchen table. Both girls looked at me. I nodded and left the table. So, John, what's happened? I asked. Are you and Tracy all right? Do you know what I mean? John asked, uncertainty. I knew exactly what John Regan was asking. I quickly discussed with myself whether I wanted to cover for my soon-to-be ex-wife. No, everything is not all right with us, I answered. 2 weeks ago she filed for divorce. And what? The silence lasted about 5 seconds, after which he cleared his throat. Because she's in the back room of Beef and Spuds playing makeout with some young guy. Helen nearly spat out her food when they walked hand in hand, and nearly died of a heart attack when they kissed. Damn, I said quietly. Thanks for the info. After finishing the conversation, I looked at the faces of my daughters as they entered the room. If she was telling the truth about not cheating on me before, then I think it will be over tonight or very soon in the future, I said sadly. True, she also told me that she is not dating anyone, so... Both girls burst into tears and hugged me. Tracy entered the house around 9. We sat in the family room and watched TV. When she stopped on the threshold, the girls and I looked at each other, and then, without saying anything, we returned to watching. Tracy pouted and left. We noticed that she hadn't jumped into the shower, and knowing glances flashed between us. The following week on Wednesday, Tracy worked late. The girls and I discussed that she was trying to avert our suspicions by being late on different days. However, this time when she came in, we heard the shower start running a few minutes later. Even though she sued me, I wasn't sure I had enough information, so I asked my lawyer if she had a private investigator in mind. The investigator my lawyer hired reported back a month later, and it was not surprising when he said that every time Tracy went out, Tracy was with the same man, and yes, she and her partner had sex on several occasions. I was surprised when it turned out that her lover was her immediate superior, Vice President Johan Werstler. Werstler had transferred to the position a year earlier from the firm's Buffalo office. He is a 35-year-old Dutchman who moved to the United States 13 years ago. A handsome, fit, blonde son of a bitch, about 6'8" tall and weighing 90 kilograms. Well-built, judging by the photographs the private investigator had. I admit, I was devastated. Tracy and I were together for almost 22 years, counting the 2 years we dated before we got married. I consider myself a decent guy, but Tracy is at least 2 steps above me in looks. For a long time I wondered how I was lucky enough to get this goddess. We became close from the start, and I thought our marriage was getting better every year, at least until she told me I was so wrong. About a month later, on a Saturday morning, Tracy was throwing up in the bathroom while the girls and I were having breakfast. The girls winced as they heard their mother vomit, and I was grinning from ear to ear. "Doesn't that bother you?" Jude finally asked. "It's disgusting." "No, it just brings back old memories," I replied. "About what?" asked Jude. At that moment, Tracy staggered into the kitchen. "Morning sickness," I exclaimed joyfully. "Do you feel like crap, my unfaithful wife?" Tracy looked up at my exclamation. Her eyes widened. "No, no, I didn't cheat on you," she screamed. "No, I cheated, my dear, and it's been a few weeks since I filed for divorce. Technically, we are still married and will be for a few more weeks. That makes you both a liar and a whore, my dear wife. Besides, she's pregnant." Both of my daughters stared wide-eyed at their mother, who in turn stared at me wide-eyed. "Don't you remember how bad you felt with Jude?" I asked. "Oh, no." "I forgot," she replied. "Oh, God, Mom. Did you get knocked up by another man while you're still married to your dad? I'm glad I'm going to college soon. Otherwise, I would never be able to meet my friends' eyes," Mo said. "You always taught me not to be a slut, and then you turned into a slut yourself." "Just great. I have 2 more years before I leave, so everyone can rub it in my face that you're a slut," Jude said. "I am not a slut," Tracy shouted. "No, you're a slut," I said quietly. "You're divorcing me because you want to fuck Johan Werstler." And you couldn't even keep your legs closed until the divorce was official. I'm sure if you look at the definition of a slut, your photo will be at the very beginning." She blushed crimson and lowered her eyes. "You weren't even delicate about this. I can't tell you how embarrassed I was when the neighbors called to talk about you and Werstler. All you had to do was wait 6 lousy months and things wouldn't look so bad. You told me that you didn't cheat and that you wanted to get a divorce so you could find someone to fall in love with. Well, you've definitely shown me that it's not about love. It's called lust, Tracy." The following weekend, Tracy moved in with Werstler. The girls and I helped carry the boxes of her things into the car. I made sure to change all the locks and codes on the garage door. I didn't see Tracy again until Mo's prom, although I knew the girls visited her sometimes. Although they were unhappy with her and embarrassed by her, she was still their mother. I never stopped them from spending time with her. Graduation is always a big crowd, so Jude and I were sitting in the gym bleachers waiting for the ceremony to begin when a very pregnant Tracy showed up with Johan. Noticing us on the podium, she headed straight towards us. I noticed a few parents who knew us and felt a mixture of embarrassment, humiliation, and horror as Tracy sat down next to Jude and Johan next to her. "Aren't we a nice little family?" I said to no one in particular as the couple joined us. "We're just supporting our daughter Kingston," Tracy replied formally. She looked from me to Johan, and I knew what she was going to do. "Stop, Tracy. Don't you dare introduce him to me here in front of everyone. Believe me, I know who he is. He looks exactly like the pictures and videos I've seen," I growled. She looked at me with surprise and offense. "Do you have photos and videos?" "Oh my God, King, seriously?" she whined. "You started the game. I just played it to the best of my ability." "I needed to know exactly what I was up against," I replied. At this point, Jude raised her hand to the side in front of her face, effectively creating a barrier between Tracy and me so we couldn't see each other. "It's time for you two to act like adults around here," she warned. "Everyone starts looking at each other. I think they're betting on whether Dad will slap a pregnant woman." This silenced us. It's bad when there's a fairly mature 16-year-old in the room. Tracy gave birth to her 3rd daughter a few weeks before Christmas. I didn't keep track of it, but Jude did. Johan called her a few minutes after the birth of her half-sister Maya. She was very excited and ran up to me to show me the photo. "Great," I said, trying to feign interest. Apparently, I didn't pretend well enough because I made her angry. "Great, Dad. Just like an adult." "It's not the child's fault, Dad," Jude hissed. It was my turn to show some ardor. "I'm glad you're happy, Jude. She is your half-sister, but for me, she is nothing more than the offspring of my cheating ex-wife." "Short and clear," I hissed in response. She blinked once, twice, 3 times, then wiped a tear from her face. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said almost in a whisper. "I got carried away. I didn't think—" She came up to me and we hugged. Unlike Tracy, I waited until we were legally divorced before going on our first date. In fact, after the divorce, I waited about a year. She was a friend from our former circle who had been divorced for about 5 years. I thought Emma was almost expecting the call when I made it. However, she seemed enthusiastic and agreed without hesitation. I was glad because, to be honest, I haven't been on a date in a long time, especially with someone not named Tracy. Emma was a tall, slender, red-haired girl about the same age as me. She was actually more of Tracy's friend than mine, but I took the safe route, rather than try it with someone I wasn't that close to. At least I thought this was the safe way. That thought vanished when she opened the door wearing a low-cut royal blue dress that fit her like it had been made especially for her. Did I mention that the hem was mid-thigh at best? I almost suffocated on her porch. And this is for a performance of Shakespeare, followed by a meal in a British pub restaurant. "Oh," I whispered, unable to say anything more. "I believe you approve of my dress," she said, smiling widely. All I could do was nod like a dumb bastard. "How about you come inside and have a few drinks until you find your voice, King?" she asked. I smiled and nodded. I hoped that my voice would return soon. My voice came back and we had a great evening out. and then a great night inside. It was her voice that made all the noise as I returned to the land of sex with a vengeance. I fingered Emma to 3 climaxes and caressed her to 2 before she experienced the final 2, as we came together and had hot sex. I have a tendency to overanalyze, and I was constantly analyzing when we returned to her house after eating and playing. You always want to think you're satisfying your woman, but I've only had Tracy's opinion with me for the last 2 decades, so I had to hope she was telling me the truth. Emma gave me a very reassuring second opinion, which encouraged me to go to higher altitudes. She asked me to stay the night, and I seriously thought about it, but I didn't tell Jude and decided it was time for me to go home. She kindly gave me a reprieve after I explained everything. "Thanks for a great night, King. I'd love to do it again someday." She was delighted. Bingo. I walked into my house a little after 1 a.m. and was surprised to see Jude lying on the couch in the family room watching TV. Outwardly, you look no worse, but you returned much later than I expected. "Is my dad in the game?" she asked. I blushed deeply. Jude is already 17 years old and lives in the real world. "Now you understand, Dad, what it's like when sometimes you tease me when I get home from dates," she said with a smirk on her beautiful face. "May I suggest that Mrs. Donovan is a good date partner?" I blushed again. I was sure that she didn't need an answer and wasn't expecting one. Jude spoke regularly with her mother and child and even babysat Tracy for a while. I was fine with it. We just didn't need to talk about her sleepovers at the Wersler house. It is noteworthy that Tracy did not marry Johan. About a year later, I assumed that she would do this only after she had sucked all 5 years of alimony out of me. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. The phone call from Rayanne Lincoln came out of the blue. Rayanne was one of Tracy's employees at First Financial. We communicated several times at various events where the spouses were present, but I can't say that we were particularly friendly or had any kind of connection. My first thought was that this was some kind of setup. Rayanne got divorced about 5 years ago after she caught her husband cheating on her. She was tall for a woman with large breasts and a muscular ass. She had big brown eyes, a mop of long brown curls, and flawless mocha skin. "Kingston, I'm not sure you remember me," she began. When I answered the call, the caller ID showed who it was, so I immediately started, aggressively. The best defense is a good attack, a kind of strategy. "Of course I remember you. It's hard to forget the volleyball goddess," I replied. "About 15 years ago, Rayanne played volleyball at the University of Pennsylvania. She still looked like she could walk onto the court. I think I surprised her by remembering this fact." "Wow. Do you remember me?" she doubted. "Maybe we can go on a date?" she asked. "Well, that is, you are not married now. I must admit I did not expect such a turn of events. I was just asked out on a date by a beautiful woman who was a colleague of my ex-wife. If this is some kind of setup, I'm ready to try." "Tracy always said you were a great guy, and I could use a little of that in my life right now," she said. "I could use some communication with the goddess right now." I agree. We visited an art museum and then went to a BBQ restaurant. It was a normal day, so she put on skinny jeans and a sweatshirt. For most women, this outfit would probably be forgotten, but with that butt squirming in my jeans, I would never be able to forget about it. Several times throughout the day, she caught me looking at that ass. She had the nobility to smile every time she did it. "Sorry. I guess I left my cool at home today," I muttered after she caught me one day. My face was very red. I just had a great time with her. Received a chaste kiss on the cheek as he dropped her off at her apartment. Jude was part of the marching band, so I ran into Tracy and Johan at several competitions over the next 2 years. I was polite to her, but rude to him. She reproached me for this several times until I snapped back. "The bastard stole and knocked up my wife. He deserved this, and much more. If you guys have a problem with this, just stay away from me," I spat. "He didn't steal me. We were already getting divorced," she squeaked. "You're just talking yourself into it," I replied before leaving. Johan, for his part, looked as if he wanted to test me. He was a little bigger and 9 years younger. But Tracy knew me well and knew that my rage would take me far. She repeatedly urged him to just ignore me. Perhaps this was for the best, because after the divorce, I began to spend even more time in the gym. I had always taken care of myself, but I used the gym more and more to burn off my anger and fill the free time I had. It was early in our second year after our divorce when Ray Ann invited me to the first financial Christmas party. We had dated several times over the previous few months, and on the fourth date, I was asked to share her bed. She knew I had problems with my ex and Johan, but she decided that I was capable of being cool enough not to embarrass her, if not myself. I assured her that I would not do anything that would embarrass her in front of her colleagues. She promised, if I could do it, a special treat. Ray Ann was the epitome of long, cool woman in a black dress when I picked her up at her apartment the night of the party. I'm sure my mouth was watering when I walked in. She kissed me tenderly on the lips, promising more later. She didn't want me to ruin her makeup. The first part of the evening was spent drinking and chatting with the live band in the background. I noticed that when Ray Ann and I walked in, several heads turned in our direction, saw a few familiar faces, so I'm sure a lot of people remember me from when I was married to Tracy. I'm sure tongues were loosened, especially because I was at a party with the sexiest woman. I didn't notice Tracy and Johan appear, but I almost ran over my ex-wife as I turned away from the bar with drinks for me and Ray Ann. The last person I expected to see tonight. What a pleasant surprise, Kingston, Tracy purred. New suit? You look very attractive. Thank you, Tracy. Yes, a new suit. I didn't want to look like a goofball being with Ray Ann. You look very good too, but then again, you always look like that. You've always been a gentleman and a good ass-eater, Tracy said. Perhaps, but you know that I'm not a liar. I wouldn't say it if it weren't true, I replied. She actually looked good, maybe 5 kilos heavier than when we were married, but the extra weight gave her a curvier, more exciting look. Definitely a MILF. I apologized and walked around her, turning my attention back to all the heads watching our exchange. I found Ray Ann and handed her the drink. She accepted it and kissed me tenderly on the lips again. I wrapped my arms around her waist, then gently ran my hand over her curvy ass and back up to her waist. Behave yourself, she said in a stern but calm voice. Yes, ma'am, I said, being chastised accordingly. Dinner was followed by drinks, and then the room was rebuilt for dancing. 30 seconds on the dance floor showed me that Ray Ann can really dance. And I. At best, so-so. However, I enjoyed watching up close how all the parts of her body swayed. We stayed there for about 30 minutes before heading to a table to catch our breath and have a drink. While at the bar, I saw several men approach Ray Ann, and, to her credit, she turned them all down. The parade of guys slowed down but continued when I returned. And to their credit, most of them played by the rules and asked me first, before asking Ray Ann if she wanted to dance. She took to the dance floor several times, explaining that she had obligations to several high-ranking officials at the firm. I understood everything and told her to do what she had to do. I didn't like it when Johan came up to the table, grinned, and asked if I minded if Ray Ann danced with him. Knowing full well that he was the vice president, I nodded slightly, and he extended his hand to Ray Ann. She obviously knew that Werstler had stolen my wife, but in this environment, she knew she couldn't disrespect him, so she got up and followed him to the dance floor. I carefully watched a couple dance to fast music until my attention was interrupted by someone's hand laying on my shoulder. I looked up and saw my ex-wife studying my face. How about giving an old friend a spin on the floor while our partners are busy? She asked sweetly. No thanks, Trace. You are my ex-wife for a reason, remember? I hissed. Can't we at least be friends? She asked. I looked at her as if she had 2, maybe 3 heads. I love you too much for me to even begin to like you. No, we can't be friends, I said. She looked shocked. Her mouth opened and closed twice, but no words came out before she walked away, as if in a daze. I walked out onto the dance floor, tapped Werstler on the shoulder, and replaced him as Ray Ann's partner. He was smart enough not to hesitate or make a fuss. At our table, Ray Ann and two other women, Christy and Joni, seemed to be having fun teasing me. Christy, a divorcee, was tall, Mediterranean-looking with a strong body, and Joni, a widow, was Nordic-looking with a boy's haircut, with breasts and butt one size larger than she was tall, if that was possible. "So when do we get a chance to ask Mr. Perfect out on a date?" asked Christy. "By now you've probably already tried Ray Ann and should be looking for other conquests. Being a single guy." She batted her eyelashes flirtatiously and then laughed along with both of the others. "Tracy always said you were the perfect husband," Joni continued. "We couldn't believe she let you go just like that, especially for Johann's sake." "What went wrong, if you don't mind our question?" "Nobody is waiting for the Spanish Inquisition, to quote Monty Python," I said. Ray Ann and Christy understood the reference and grinned. Joni, who was about 5 years younger than both of them, didn't understand, and her face showed it. "I'm still not completely sure, although I have suspicions. One day she tells me that she doesn't love me, and a couple of days later she files for divorce. 2 weeks later, he is already dating Werstler. Adding one to the other, somehow I get 3. She tells me she's divorcing me so she won't cheat on me, then she starts having sex with him and gets pregnant before we even divorce. We all warned her about him," Christy said. "They started going to dinners together. Then the lunches became longer. We don't know if she cheated. But every time I was close to him, we could see their little touches. When she was with him, she giggled like a schoolgirl. It was pathetic. Not so much now." "Does familiarity breed contempt?" I said, quoting an old idiom. None of the trio reacted. I brought Joni to the dance floor first, then Christy. We danced a couple of songs, then returned to the table. "Okay, you two. That's all you'll get from my man. My man. Got it?" Ray Ann said sharply. I heard the metal in her voice, and I realized that the other women heard it too. However, I had to do a little work on myself. "Wait, does this mean I won't be able to try these two?" I asked, in the most innocent tone. "Only if you don't need them anymore," Ray Ann said, covering my groin with her hand for a second. "I'm partial to possessive genitalia." So he leaned over to Ray Ann and pressed his lips to hers. She responded by opening her mouth and accepting my tongue, and the kiss went from hot to scorching. This went on for a while until someone cleared their throat. "Oh, please, you two. Don't make me tell you to rent a room. It would be so corny," Joni said. "We don't need to rent a room. We both have our own houses." Ray Ann giggled. Later that evening, I learned from Ray Ann that she never told Tracy about us. I had to ask about this. "It's none of that stupid bitch's business," Ray Ann replied. "We are friends, but this does not mean that I approve of all the decisions of my friends. And her stupidity is my happiness, unless you are still fixated on it. She was my first love, and probably some part of me will always love her. But she is my past." "Are you my future?" I asked. She placed her hands on either side of my face. Her eyes practically glowed. She pressed her lips to mine. 2 months later, I proposed. 6 months after that, we got married. Even though Ray Ann and Tracy were pretty good friends, we didn't invite her to the wedding. She said she understood everything when she and Ray Ann talked. A couple of years later, Johann returned to Holland, leaving Tracy alone to raise their daughter. At least this asshole kept sending money. My daughters kept in touch with Tracy and their half-sister, but as I asked, they did not tell me about Tracy's life. The girls said that their mother asked them several times to try to get me to talk to her, but none of them wanted to do it. Ray Ann also kept her at a distance, not even inviting her to our home. Unable to bear all the shenanigans, Tracy finally contacted me directly. "We've had 23 good years, King," she said. "The least you can do is give me some time to talk to you." "I still love you." "Yes, I know. You're just not attracted to me anymore. And I love you too much for me to ever even start liking you, Tracy. So don't expect me to be your friend. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.